Hi, everyone. Thank you for joining. We're just going to give a few minutes and let people trickle in before we go ahead and get started with today's webinar. Probably give it 2 minutes and then we'll jump in, not waste too much time. While people are starting to join, I'll just go ahead and say, if you have questions at any point during the presentation, I would encourage you to use the chat feature. Go ahead and post your questions, get some conversation going. People can feel free to respond to each other. We've got a number of folks from the Loop side that are here in attendance, and of course, our awesome merchants that are joining as well. So keep the chat conversation going, post the questions in there as you think of them, and then we'll definitely have time at the end of our session for open Q&A. We had a few questions come in ahead of time that we'll address, and then we'll also talk through any questions that come up in the chat as well. So I'm going to just give it maybe one more minute, and then we'll go ahead and jump in and get started with the content. All right. It's 2 after, so I'm going to go ahead and jump in and get us started. I think we had a couple other people join in. So first of all, welcome. Thank you so much for joining us today. Hopefully, since you registered, you know our topic today is called From Good to Great, how to incentivize your customers to exchange, decrease refund rate, and boost retained revenue for your brand. So the Good to Great portion, we'll kind of talk through how we came up with that name. Essentially, this webinar is exclusively for Loop merchants, and earlier this summer, we launched a benchmark report that talks through some of our data and averages that we see across our entire scope of customers, but also by vertical and depending on what industry you kind of are sitting in. And so we have a lot of awesome merchants that are using our product in really unique ways and kind of pulling on all the levers that they can to try and decrease their refund rate and boost that retained revenue. And so we'll share some examples of what those things are that those merchants are doing, as well as how they kind of stand out from the crowd when it comes to decreasing that refund ratio and driving up retained revenue. So as I mentioned, we'll go ahead and jump in as we go through the presentation today. If you have questions or just comments or want to get conversation going in the chat to just see what other people on the call are thinking about or how they're approaching things, feel free to use that chat functionality. We will have time at the end for Q&A where we'll address any questions that come up. So with that, we'll go ahead and jump right in. And just as a brief introduction, I'm Taylor Humphrey. I'm a senior product marketing manager here at Loop, and I'm pretty excited to talk about this topic with you all. So a quick agenda, we're going to introduce the problem, talk through the why and how of incentives. What does that mean when we say to incentivize customers to choose an exchange over a refund, and how do we actually make that happen? What are the ways within Loop that you can customize that experience and drive those behaviors? We will talk through some success stories of some of our brands who are using these different levers and seeing really awesome outcomes when it comes to retained revenue and decreasing their refund ratio, or essentially the money that they lose to refunds during the exchange or the return process. And then an exciting part, we'll give a little sneak preview into what's next. So hopefully all of you know, as customers of Loop, that we're a very product and innovation focused company. We're always thinking of new ways and wanting to get feedback on the best ways that we can help you all retain more revenue. So I'll be sharing a sneak peek of an upcoming feature that is aimed at just being another way that we can help you do just that. And then we'll wrap up and have probably a few minutes left at the end for Q&A. So to kind of introduce the problem and set the stage here, I think this is probably no surprise to anyone on this call, but the e-commerce market is shifting. Obviously, over the last couple of years, e-commerce really saw a boom, and the rise of online shopping kind of exploded, especially with the COVID-19 pandemic. But this year, things are looking a little bit different in that space and just in the global economy as a whole. So you probably, hopefully, haven't experienced too much of this, but in reality, customers are changing their behaviors when it comes to spending. So these are some recent stats from the last couple of weeks and months in some of the research that we've been doing on our side. 80% of consumers are saying that they actually have less confidence to spend right now and are really cutting back on purchases that are non-essential, just with kind of what's up in the air with the economy, kind of the state that we're in with a little bit of a downturn. Customers are just being a little bit more shy with how they spend and more selective with what they spend their money on. And then this next one ties more into the return experience altogether, but consumers, 57% of consumers have actually stopped shopping from a brand completely after just one negative returns experience, which is kind of crazy. It just goes to show that once you do have those customers and you know that they're loyal, or if they're new to your brand, the just one negative returns experience can actually change or alter if they ever shop with you again or how they engage with your brand. So really kind of points out that the returns process is more than just, an add-on to the shopping experience. It's really an extension of your brand and your brand experience. And then this last stat, a little bit more positive, 86% of brand loyal customers are actually likely to recommend a brand that they feel strongly about to a friend. So I think this just goes to show the more that you can kind of sprinkle in those moments of surprise and delight to drive that customer engagement, that customer loyalty, and really create advocates out of your customers, the more likely they are to talk about you, spread that on to people that they know, and really speak highly of your brand. I know personally for me and for a lot of people I know, word of mouth is still one of the best marketing tactics when it comes to especially trying out a new brand for the first time. So we'll kind of talk through some of the ways that you can really preserve an awesome customer experience and create some of those moments of surprise and delight that would lead to some of these positive outcomes. And then real quick, I just want to touch on, I mentioned our benchmark report that we released earlier this summer. It kind of takes a look at across all of our customers, our entire customer base, what are the averages that our merchants are seeing when it comes to exchange rate and refund rate. So you don't have to memorize this slide. The full report will be shared out after in case you haven't seen it. And this looks at not only our aggregate customers, but also our customers in each vertical segment. So you can kind of take a look at that and understand for your brand in particular, how do you stack up? Are you beating the average? Are you sitting right around the average? And then hopefully with some of the tactics we'll talk about today, you can try some of those things out, experiment, and see what moves the needle when it comes to driving up your exchanges and driving down your refunds. So just to call out that in aggregate across all of our customers, our average refund rate sits at about 70%. And then about 30% of our transactions lead to an exchange. And this is represented in dollar amounts. So money refunded and money that turns into exchanges. So just kind of keep that in mind as we go through the presentation. And this is kind of getting us into the meat. So by incentivizing customers to exchange, you not only increase the chances that their money stays within your business right in that moment while they're going through the return process in real time, but you also have an opportunity to create a delightful experience that boosts retention and loyalty into the future so that when somebody comes into the return experience, they're obviously in a bit of an emotional, delicate space. They've received an item or a set of items that they were hoping might work out, and they're disappointed maybe that something didn't meet their expectations. And so they're already kind of coming into the return with, a bit of an emotional reaction. And so being able to turn that into maybe a feeling of disappointment, changing that into a feeling of, wow, I just had a really awesome experience that I maybe don't get all the time when it comes to returns, or I don't think of when I have to go to make a return. That can really stick with a customer and lead to them thinking, oh, in the future, if I ever need to return or exchange with this brand, it's going to be so easy that it's not going to be a deterrent to me, not buying something from them potentially in the future. So with that, these are some of the ways that we enable our customers to incentivize exchanges within Loop today. So as a Loop merchant, you have a variety of tools at your fingertips to really get the customer behaviors that you want, which, more exchanges and fewer refunds. And so we're going to break these down and deep dive into each of them so that you can understand what's possible when it comes to retaining more revenue while also delighting those customers. So just at a high level, we're going to talk about Shop Now bonus credit, store credit incentive, which is a fairly new feature that some of you may or may not be familiar with, dynamic bonus credit, which is very new, and then dynamic fees, which have been around for a while, but we'll walk through what they are, how to use them, and then also some examples of merchants who are using these and seeing some pretty awesome results as a result of that. All right, so first and foremost, we have Shop Now bonus credit. This is really the opportunity to incentivize your customers with extra shopping credit to find a new product that they love right as they're going through the return flow. And the point of this is really to help convert more refunds into exchanges and create an opportunity to capture additional revenue in the form of upsells. So if I'm a customer, I receive an item and it maybe just, didn't work out. The sizing is right, but I just don't like the pattern, or, it's just not my style. I'm coming into the return intending to just get my money back. But when I see this pop-up that says, hey, if you shop now and look for a new item, you're actually going to get $10 added to your return credit for you to find a new item that you love. That's pretty intriguing. I don't want to leave free money, if you want to say, on the table. And so by shopping now, I can actually buy something at a higher price point or potentially get two items that I wasn't thinking about buying when I initially came into this experience, and take advantage of that extra credit in the form of, essentially a discount. And setting this up is really easy. It lives within the return policy settings under Shop Now. So that bottom image is just kind of a screenshot of what this looks like in the return policy settings when you would go to set this up. A call out for this is that if you are not currently leveraging a plan that gives you access to Shop Now as an experience and bonus credit go hand in hand. So if you have questions about access to getting Shop Now enabled or using bonus credit to incentivize exchanges and it's not part of your current plan, I would encourage you to reach out to your merchant success manager, and they're happy to answer any questions when it comes to upgrading or pricing or things like that. If you are already leveraging Shop Now, but you're not using a bonus credit, this can be a really, really effective lever when it comes to driving more exchanges over refunds. And then, as we're about to see, really creating an opportunity to make additional revenue off of the exchange experience. So wanted to highlight one of our brands, Aviator Nation, who's leveraging this feature really, really effectively. So they currently offer a $25 bonus credit to their customers to incentivize them to shop now. And with that, they capture an additional $11.38 per return in upsell revenue. So that's looking at all of their returns, ones where folks are taking advantage of exchanges and shop now and not, and they're actually making an additional almost $12 off of those just by leveraging this incentive to get people to basically not leave money on the table and to find something else that they love. So for them, that means that they retain 67.6% of all returned revenue, meaning that their refund rate is only 32.4%. And I just want to kind of draw our attention back to that earlier slide where we looked at Loop's averages. Our average refund rate across our customers is 70%. So while Aviator Nation, the use of bonus credit is not solely driving all of these outcomes, but it is a really effective lever when it comes to them really having almost a 40% advantage from our average when it comes to refund rate and revenue retention. They're using a number of different levers, and I think this just goes to show that trying different things and experimenting with your policy setup and different levers within Loop really can make a huge impact when it comes to bottom line business outcomes. Next up, we're going to talk about store credit incentive. So this is a pretty new feature that just launched in the last couple of months. Previously, the only way to offer customers a true incentive to help them increase the chances that they choose something other than just getting their money back was to offer Shop Now bonus credit. But now all merchants have the ability to encourage customers to choose a gift card over a refund by actually offering an extra amount in credit just for the gift card. So this really helps decrease refund ratio and boost retained revenue in the form of store credit. So if I'm a customer and I maybe get the offer to shop now, but I'm busy, I don't have time to necessarily go through and find a new item right in that moment, I can then see this offer and say, oh, well, if I know I love this brand, if I know there's something that if I took the time to find something, I actually probably would find an item that I love, I can choose to get an extra $5 in store credit rather than getting money back to my original payment method, which may or may not incur a handling fee, which we're going to talk about a little bit later as well. And then similarly, in terms of setup, this also lives within return policy settings under the store credit outcome. There's a few ways that you can set this up, which we're also going to go over. But again, another really effective lever that helps kind of boost that retained revenue and just create a moment of surprise for a customer. If I see bonus credit when it comes to shop now, but I don't choose that, and then I see, oh, I don't even have to shop now in order to maybe get an extra amount of credit, that really creates an experience where I feel like the brand cares about me as a consumer and really values, me staying loyal to them and creating a good experience for me. So I mentioned that store credit incentive was a relatively new feature. I wanted to just call out that Daily Sale is one of our merchants who is taking advantage of this and really started taking advantage of it pretty early before, it's been widely adopted. And so fairly early data, but we looked at transactions where store credit incentive was active on their return policy versus not. And I also included that they're offering a $15 incentive to choose store credit over a refund. And what that led to is that they actually are seeing an 8.5% difference in their refund rate when store credit incentive is offered versus when it's not. So 8.5% fewer dollars lost to refunds essentially because customers are actually choosing that store credit option over just getting their money back. So pretty powerful when you kind of equate that down to a dollar amount. It's just another way that you're kind of retaining that revenue, keeping those customers' money within your ecosystem, and then of course encouraging or increasing the chances that they come back to spend that money with you later and get a new product. Next, this feature is very, very new, hot off the presses this week, dynamic bonus credit. So previously, you may or may not be familiar with incentives, both on the Shop Now bonus credit front as well as store credit incentive. Incentives could only be offered in the form of a flat dollar amount. So if my average order value is $100 and I want to offer bonus credit, previously I could only choose $5, $10, $15. I couldn't make that, more dynamic, or I couldn't base it off of whatever the value of the returned items that a customer was trying to bring back was. But with dynamic bonus credit, which is officially out as of this week, you can now choose to offer that credit as a percentage of the total value of the items being returned. So this allows for a lot more flexibility in terms of how you incentivize your customers, and it also helps really increase the ROI of each offer. If I am a brand that potentially sells a $25 hat, but I also sell $100 sweatshirts, I don't necessarily want to offer bonus credit for the same amount when returns are coming back just for a hat versus multiple sweatshirts and other items that have a higher value. So this just provides a little bit more ability to customize the experience and tailor the incentive that you offer to kind of maximize the chances that you get a higher return on that. And similarly, this also lives within the return policy settings under store credit and Shop Now, if applicable, if you are on a plan that's leveraging Shop Now. So pretty exciting updates. Now we'll kind of switch gears to talk about dynamic fees. So while not inherently an incentive per se, similar to the other ones that we just reviewed, dynamic fees is something that's been around for a while that we don't always talk about in a big way with our customers, but we wanted to highlight it for this because it fits right in with the value proposition of being able to experiment and kind of test out what works for you and what works for your business in terms of your return policy, but also it's another way that you can have flexibility over how you're assessing fee amounts based on the return outcome type that a customer is choosing. So with dynamic fees, you can kind of guide customers to choose a choice that they get the most value out of, while also managing shipping costs and helping you retain more revenue. So the screenshot on the right kind of shows the customer experience of this. If I go into the flow and, as an example, say I'm incentivized to shop now and I really just don't want to, I just want my money back. I'm saying, hey, I just want a refund. I'm then presented with the option here to say, okay, we understand that you want your money back, but if you choose store credit, we're going to charge you, a shipping fee to have that item sent back to cover the cost. But if you choose store credit, that shipping fee is going to be lower than if you just want a refund back to your original payment method. Because if you pick store credit, that's another way that customers are keeping their money within your ecosystem, within your business, versus if you just give a refund, there's no guarantee that that customer is going to choose you when it comes to spending that money that they just got back. So this is another lever that you can kind of pull on and use to your advantage when it comes to retaining revenue. And there's a few ways that these can be set up. So we have a number of options in terms of charging a flat rate, charging a percentage of estimated label cost, similarly, percentage of the return value, or even as specific as charging a certain amount based on a product tag that you have set up in Shopify. And wanted to call out a really interesting example with this. So Lake Pajamas is one of our merchants who is leveraging dynamic fees to really structure their policy in a way that drives the outcomes that they're looking for and encourages those customer behaviors that they want. So they currently charge a $7 fee on refunds, the highest fee for refunds, a $5 fee, slightly lower on store credit, and then they offer free exchanges, which leads to, for their brand, 44.2% revenue retention, which means they're beating Loop's average for similar merchants by about 14% when it comes to retained revenue. And they also see a store credit ratio that's pretty high of 28%. So 28% of their returned dollar values actually gets kept in the form of customers choosing store credit. And lastly, this just creates a better all-around customer experience. We just wanted to call out that with Loop, all exchange orders ship for free. So that really kind of closes the circle and rounds out the circle of your customer's ideal post-purchase experience. If I come in and, again, I'm in that vulnerable state where I'm disappointed perhaps in the product that I got or how the product looked on me or something to do with, how the product fits, I'm probably coming into that experience not expecting a whole lot, maybe even expecting that returns are going to be a hassle and it's going to be a pain to wait to get my money back and go through the whole process. But by making this really easy and providing those moments of, oh, wow, I actually can get extra credit if I shop now, or maybe I don't even have to have the time to do that, but I can get extra credit to take this back in the form of a gift card. And then on top of that, if I do decide to exchange, I'm going to get that exchange order sent to me for free. I'm going to, get that new item and ideally be satisfied. And then I'm going to remember that when I go to shop again of which brands I had a positive experience with versus those that I didn't, that I may say, that's it. I had one bad experience and I'm too afraid to, risk that again. So I'm just going to shop with a brand that I know I can trust and I know has a positive post-purchase experience. All right, so last up, pretty excited to tease this. I mentioned earlier that we have a new feature that is aimed at continuing to help our merchants retain more revenue and decrease the amount of dollars lost to refunds. And we're calling this persistent credit. This is something that is coming soon. If you happen to be a member of our beta group, you probably got an email about this week because this feature is actually just heading into beta as we speak. And what this means is we are experimenting with something where customers who come into Loop, they initiate their return, they go all the way through the flow and maybe they turn down incentives, or if a brand isn't offering those incentives, they say, I just want a refund. I just want to get my money back. I'm set on that. It is what it is. And maybe I just want to get through this experience as quickly as possible because I'm busy and I have a lot of things going on in my day. We will actually send customers an email about 24 hours after they've requested that refund, pending that their exchange or that their refund hasn't been processed yet. And we'll ask them if they'd like to convert that refund over to store credit. If there's an incentive that exists on the return policy, that will also apply with this offer. So if I have a $5 incentive for store credit that's in place in my policy, my customer would get an email asking them, hey, do you want to convert your refund to store credit? And if so, you're going to get an extra $5 in the form of a gift card. It's not too late to change your mind, essentially. And with that, we're going to be testing to see how does this impact conversions from refunds over to store credit? How does this ideally drive more retained revenue for our customers? And what are the different levers that can maximize the success of an offer such as this? How do customers perceive it? How do they take action on it? We're going to be asking ourselves all those questions and measuring the data around this to understand, what's the value and how do we make this the most optimal experience for customers as well as for our merchants. So I wanted to plug this because if you're interested in this feature, if this sounds like something that would be of interest to you and testing out, we are actively seeking customers to beta test this and try it out and give us feedback. So we can share more information about that. The one caveat is that you do need to be offering at least refunds and store credit within your return policy to take advantage of this functionality. But we're happy to provide more information. We have some video demonstrations of what this experience would look like for you and for the customer. And we're really ready to go to turn this on. We have a few merchants that are already actively beta testing this, and we're excited to have more added into that pool. So if this is something of interest to you, you can go ahead and just email me directly, and I'll make sure to connect you to the right people on our side. My email is taylor@loopreturns.com, so pretty straightforward. And we're happy to answer questions too, even if this is something that you aren't necessarily sure you want to test out, but you're interested in just seeing the flow and providing feedback. That's also an option. We always want to get as close as possible to our merchants and incorporate your thoughts and feedback whenever possible. So with that, that is pretty much the end of the planned content for today's webinar. I wanted to open up the chat for anybody who might have questions or is curious about anything that we covered today. We did have a question come in before the webinar that was around we get this question a lot from merchants, how do you decide what incentive amount to offer and what's right, what's going to give you the most ROI, what's going to drive customers to actually change that behavior? And this is an awesome question. We see a lot of success with merchants who are offering anywhere from 10 to 20% of their average order value in the form of those incentives. And I think, in the flow basically happens in the same way that we walked through the presentation today. So Shop Now bonus credit would be what's presented first if you're taking advantage of that functionality, followed by store credit incentive. So another way to think about it is maybe offering the highest incentive for an exchange, similar to what we talked about with fees, and a slightly lower incentive for store credit to kind of really help drive those behaviors that you're looking for. And the last thing that I'll kind of add on that point, because we also get this question a lot, is, okay, this means we're discounting in the experience, is the upside of offering incentives or discounts worth it when it comes to, driving retained revenue, potentially gaining additional upsell revenue? Like, how do I weigh the cost benefit of that? And I would challenge you to kind of think about how often are you incentivizing customers who have never shopped with your brand before, or who maybe shop with you one time and then don't come back, and you're trying to kind of execute a win back campaign by offering 15% off your purchase or 20% off one item or things like that. I would challenge you to sort of think about this as a high leverage opportunity where somebody is actively engaging with your brand in this moment. They're not scrolling through Instagram. They're not, sitting on Facebook and happening to just see an ad, or even checking their email and seeing that they have an email offer in their inbox. They're actively engaging with your brand through the form of a return process. And so by providing them with that on the spot real-time incentive, that's an increased chance that they're going to say, oh, I'm already going through this flow and I've already carved out the time to do this return and go through the process anyway. Like, what's an extra couple of minutes to potentially shop now and find something else that I really enjoy, especially if I know my first product didn't work out. So kind of thinking about it from that angle, hopefully that gives you some strategies and some potential tactics to think through when it comes to leveraging some of these features within Loop, incentivizing with different amounts, playing around with all these different levers that we offer, and potentially maybe exploring something like Shop Now and bonus credit if you're not currently using that within your experience. So with that, it doesn't look like we have any questions in the chat, which is totally fine. I hope that this was helpful. I hope that this was valuable. And if you do happen to think of questions at any point based on the information that we covered or things that you saw, be sure to reach out to us. I think I provided my email address once more, but I wanted to just call it out one more time. I'm happy to answer questions, or if I don't know the answer, which may be the case, I'm happy to connect you with the right folks here at Loop who will be able to answer that question for you. All right. Thanks so much. I appreciate everybody's attendance and looking forward to more of these types of events in the future. Thanks.